DPMTO mentioned in yesterday's speech about the free flow of trade and goods along the Malacca Straits, and a number of people were talking about it, and then perhaps not everybody fully comprehend what he had meant when he said that. Would you like to enunciate a little bit on that?
Well, let me try and say more or less the same thing. Singapore depends on trade. It's our lifeblood. If the lines are cut, we die. Because our world trade, international trade is, I think, 3.5 times our GDP. Mm-hmm. It's the highest ratio in the world, higher than Hong Kong, higher than any other country in the world. So we have a vested interest in keeping trade links, trade routes open, in having freedom of navigation on the seas, and in having an international rule of law which applies to freedom of navigation and makes sure that the seas remain open.
Right.
And when you talk about the seas, some of the most critical bits are the straits, the narrow parts, the Straits of Singapore, the Straits of Malacca, where it's so narrow that there's no international waters along the straits. Right. There are no high seas. Because if you look at the Straits of Malacca, the Indonesians are on one side, the Malaysians on the other, and the center line is a boundary in most of the straits. Certainly that's so in the Straits of Singapore. So technically there are no high seas, and ships cannot automatically sail through a strait like that, unless there's special arrangement, which there is, because under UNCLOS, straits have a special regime, and ships are entitled to sail through, commerce is entitled to go through, and the littoral states cannot block that, cannot even readily regulate that, except under very stringent conditions. And Singapore, sitting in the middle of the South Straits of Singapore and at the southern end of the Straits of Malacca, has a vested interest in making sure that this UNCLOS regime is upheld. That littoral states do not say, no, I think this is not very safe, and please follow the following rules, only certain hours or certain times or certain routes, and unilaterally restrict freedom of movement within those straits. And we've taken that position consistently, even elsewhere. I mean, DPMTO talked about the Torres Straits. You may not know where it is, but it's in the northeastern part of Australia, between the mainland and the Great Barrier Reef. Right. So it's a narrow area, it's a dangerous area. There have been lots of shipwrecks, and there's also important natural resources, the Great Barrier Reef, the coral. So if you have an oil tanker run aground, that's big trouble. So the Australians decided, this is about 15 years ago, to introduce compulsory pilotage, which means that the ships which go through must take a pilot on board, which means basically the Australians now have a control over which ships can go, when it goes, and if the pilot's not available, you can't turn up, you can't sail, and it's no longer quite so free as before. And they did it unilaterally. There was no international agreement, and we objected as a matter of principle that this is wrong, you have to go according to UNCLOS rules. And I think we take the same attitude when it comes to the Straits of Malacca and the Straits of Singapore, that if any country tries to restrict movement through it unilaterally or selectively to say certain countries cannot use the straits, I think we would be completely opposed to that. Mm-hmm. And that's quite fundamental.
Right. Are we at danger of seeing any of that happening?
I don't think we're at risk of it happening, but I think some countries do worry that it could happen to them.